up on your fear, how to train a foal, all sorts of individual questions, and the answers are usually pretty simple and very similar. Because of this, we've created a new segment. Each month, we'll film a video that's specific to your questions. We're calling it Ask Annabelle. So, to start out, no matter what the issue is, to answer almost any question, it's very simple and usually the same. To quote Mary 12 Ponies, there are no problem horses, only problem riders. Horses have thrived for thousands of years without humans engaging them in our perceptions about how they need to behave and what they need to spend their time doing. So whether we take the time to educate ourselves on how to communicate properly with our horses or not, these horses will continue on being horses. We want to be bonding with our horses, but we first have to look at ourselves. So, if your horse keeps bucking you off, biting, kicking, or causing other dangerous behavior, it's critical we get back to the basics and start fresh with renewed knowledge of how we can do our part to help our equine friends understand exactly what it means for us to be the boss horse. If there's something going wrong here, we are miscommunicating. It's always up to the rider to do our part to communicate well with our horses. The similarity to all of these bad habits really aren't bad habits at all. For this month's video, I've chosen some of the most common questions that trainers face. The similarity between all of these is that bad habits really aren't bad habits at all, but a symptom of fear or uncertainty present in your horse from his lack of understanding of what you're asking him. Each horse is individual in his response and his individual emotional baggage. It's a supremely difficult task to address individuals with nothing more than a brief note about the issue, so I will do my best. However, I'll try to shed some light on the bigger pictures in hopes that it'll help the trainer to solve the problem through diligence, attention to the animal's individual needs, and devotion. Now, our first question of the day comes from Ashley Lee from Connecticut. Ashley writes, "My horse always runs away with me, often in times of high stress or when he feels headstrong. He's uncomfortable when I get in this mode, and it's starting to get to the point where I feel unsafe when I'm mounted upon him. I was recently thrown from another horse and have lost some confidence from the fall. I want to figure out why my horse is running away with me. Other than that, he's a wonderful gelding. Please help me to remedy this problem." Well, here's my response to that, Ashley. There are many reasons you could label a horse a runaway. Once, early on in my career as a horsewoman, I was required to ride 10 horses a day for a horse leaseman in order to ready them for a summer rental program. We'd ride around the same 3-mile track at varying degrees of time for each animal every day. Each horse reacted differently, and it was hard to get to know each horse as the 3 of us were responsible for readying almost 600 head of horses in about 3 months' time. One day, on the job board, I had a horse named Alias. He was a fine, attentive animal who I immediately took a liking to. He was not known as a runaway, but had run away with an inexperienced woman on the day before, which was why he was switched to my task. We were having a great time when about halfway through the miles, he took off like a shot up the mountain into the thickets. He started bucking and rearing and running, and I ended up grabbing onto a tree limb to escape. Frightened, but unhurt, I caught up to him where he had stopped upon my dismount. I tried walking up to him in another pasture and coming down the roadway to avoid him running off again. After some thought and attention put into this, we figured out that this particular animal was simply bored. It didn't have anything to do with him wanting to misbehave badly. He just wanted us to mix it up. Each day he was used on a different part of the ranch from that point on, and we never had another bucking or fleeing episode. This is just one example of what might cause a runaway. Some horses react out of fear when their fight or flight kicks in. Some horses will make a game out of seeing what sort of rise they can get out of you. And some can think of nothing but getting back to the barn. We call this being barn sour. So, as you can see, each animal responds differently to different stimulus. It's important that we keep in mind the necessity of problem solving while trying to rectify something as dangerous as a runaway. Here are a few tips that can help if your horse is running all over you and running away. Teach the horse the difference between going forward willingly and running off. Do this in a safe, enclosed area where you can control the animal. If your horse is relaxed and going forward willingly, you can thwart the possibility of having an excited runaway horse. Do this using the methods taught earlier, using more pressure to less pressure until your horse is responding soft and willing with anything that you're asking. Make sure that this is consistent and that your horse is responding to this every single time. Number 2 is know your horse. We keep coming back to this because it's vitally important to know how your horse ticks. It's also important to know how to react to your horse when something upsets it. Learn to recognize signs of distress or discomfort. What makes your horse afraid? Is there something specific that you can pinpoint that's creating the issue of the runaway? whether it's a flapping tarp in the wind, whether the horse is barn sour and just wants to go home, if it's headstrong, bored, frightened. Identify the emotion associated with the runaway, and at this point, you'll be able to more effectively problem solve why the horse is running away to begin with. Number 3, if you're having trouble getting your horse to yield to your cues, go back to the basics and see what you're missing. Applying the knowledge of horse communication and proper psychology is very, very critical when dealing with something as dangerous as a runaway. Question number 2 of the day is from Jen Phillips. Jen hails from Washington, and she writes, "My horse is a scaredy horse. She is scared of the wind, scared of the trailer, scared of the tarps on the haystack. She is scared of everything. I'm anxious by nature as well, and I'm very worried that maybe she's feeding off of my nervousness. Is this possible? I don't even want to get on her because she can be so skittish when something is unfamiliar to her." Well, here's my answer to that, Jen. It's a great question. It sounds like you also need to get back to the basics with your horse. Not only is it important for you to build trust with the animal, it's also critical that you build confidence in the animal as well. Gaining your horse's trust is the first step after removing your own fear. Let's talk about you for a second, Jen. Remaining calm is very important. Remember always that the horse feeds off your energy. If you're nervous or anxious, the horse will be nervous or anxious. Having anxiety around the animal will ensure that the animal will be anxious too. So if the horse has an anxious disposition to begin with, as do you, this will only complicate things in your training. It doesn't pay to feed your nervousness around horses. They're instinctively going to react negatively to this, and you don't want your horse to be responding negatively to any of the cues that you give it. Helping the horse to gain confidence in this situation is a critical step. It's comprised of desensitizing the horse over a period of time appropriate for the horse. Some horses will learn more quickly, and some horses will learn a little slower. And it's also important to have consistency with this. I'll use Prairie as an example. For a while I went on a trip. I was training horses out of state. I hadn't been on Prairie for about 3 months. At this point, there was a little girl that was supposed to be riding her, but kind of had slacked off in her duties. When I came back, I was carrying an empty feed pan past where Prairie had been, and had been riding her all day. Completely fine, no issues on the trail, but when I walked by with that feed bin, and it kind of flapping in the wind, she did not know what to think. Now, this is a horse that I have desensitized very, very well over long periods of time and have been consistent with. But 3 months and she forgot everything that I had taught her as far as being scared of that feed bin. So consistency is also another key that is crucial in building the confidence and desensitization of your animal. Over a period of time appropriate for the horse, anything that the animal may be exposed to is important to expose it. Tarps, water, trailer loading, traffic, horns, anything at all that you can think of. Build up small and then build up as the horse gains confidence in you and in its abilities. Firmly reinforce good behavior, and add variety to the animal's work and play. Horses. If God made anything more beautiful, he kept it to himself. Again, I'm Annabelle Cabela. Thank you for joining me for this month's Ask Annabelle. Be sure to send in your questions, and we'll cover them in detail as much as we possibly can. Remember, the more information you can give me, the better I can help you. Thanks again, and happy trails.